G'day whiskey lovers, welcome to the Hard Malt channel. My name's Tim, and today I thought something different. I will just talk a little bit about why we like whiskies that are natural colour and unchill filtered. I'm sure many of you out there have already formed your own opinions and theories and thoughts as to why this is the case. There may be some that may not necessarily agree. And then there may be some of you out there still relatively new on your whiskey journey that may not have really put much thought into what this thing is, natural colour and unchill filtered and all that kind of stuff. So I thought I'll start with natural colour. Now, once you get to a stage in your whiskey journey and you start realising that distillers and bottlers are allowed to put caramel colourant into the whiskey to make it look darker, you start to become, I don't want to say disheartened or anything like that, but you start to feel, if you've been buying a particular single malt, and I'm focusing on single malt here, if you've been buying a particular single malt and then you suddenly discover it's highly likely or perhaps definitely being coloured with or tinted with caramel colourant, you're going to start to feel a bit cheated about it, aren't you? I mean, to me, it's akin to buying a car with low kilometres and then just your mechanic informing you that the person who sold it to you wound back the clock on the odometer. Now, sure, you can't really do that these days too easily with modern cars, but that's what I sort of liken colouring whiskey to. It's faking it, especially in single malt whiskey. Single malt whiskey is a batch made product. It's made in pot stills, so you're forced to make batches. Every batch is there's going to be slight differences, especially even when it comes to maturation. You could get the same ex-bourbon casks from the same bourbon distillery year after year and put your spirit into those barrels. But every tree is different, so the wood is going to be slightly different. So sometimes you're going to get a little bit more colour and a little bit more flavour. Sometimes the flavour will be slightly different, perhaps slightly less colour, and so on and so forth. But why do you need to fake it by putting caramel colourant in? There's plenty of distilleries out there that when it comes to bottling, they do put the caramel colourant in to try and keep their batches looking the same. Now, I'm not going to name any names of distilleries or companies even. Most of us know which companies tend to do it and which distilleries they own. And I just feel like you're being fake. You're trying to deceive us into buying a whiskey that looks older, looks more flavoursome, but then in the end, most likely is not. So that's my thoughts on caramel colouring or using colouring in whiskey. But I would go as far to say that I don't care what you do with your blended whiskey, there's a fair excuse to use colouring in blended whiskey to try and keep every batch looking the same. However, I would pose this. The people that are buying those cheap and, I don't want to say cheap and nasty, but the cheaper blends, the ones that are most definitely caramel coloured, they're probably buying whiskey so rarely that they won't even notice if there's a difference in the colour to the previous bottle that they had. Or, do you know what? If somebody is drinking the same whiskey and going through bottles that quickly, do you know what? They're probably drinking so much or too much of it too often to even care what the colour is. That's my opinion anyway, just my opinion. So these companies that are putting caramel colourant into whiskey and chill filtering their whiskies, which I'll come to in a minute, they're doing it mostly for profit, especially when you're chill filtering the whiskey, because you're doing that so that you can bottle it at a lower strength, all the way down to 40% in a lot of cases. If you're doing that for profit, if you take my thought into account that, hey, if somebody's buying this cheap supermarket blend, they're probably not going to be that fussed about what the colour looks like or whether the colour was the same as the one before. And as I said, if somebody is able to notice it, they're not going to care because they're drinking far too much of it far too often. So you care about your profits, save money, get rid of the colouring. Simple. Sure, I know it doesn't cost all that much, probably, but when companies bring stuff down to 43% and then they bring it down to 40% just to get that little bit more profit, well, hey, get rid of your colouring. There's a little bit more profit for you. You heard it here first. Right, enough about colour. Chill filtration, or why do we like unchill filtered whiskies? Now, a lot of you may have heard about the chill filtration process is developed for, it's meant to stop whiskies going cloudy at colder temperatures when the strength is below 46%. So if you're bottling your whiskies at 43 or 40%, when that whiskey is below, say, 10, 15 degrees Celsius, or somebody adds cold water or even ice to it, what's going to happen is some of the esters and long chain fatty acids are going to kind of fall out of suspension and almost solidify, not to the point that you have chunks of fat in your whiskey, just falls out of suspension, so you can actually see these different components of the whiskey and the alcohol swirling in the glass, which causes a bit of a cloudy effect, or the Scotch mist, as a lot of us call it. So chill filtration, what that does is it removes all of that so that your whiskey doesn't go cloudy when you put ice in it, or you're drinking it on a super cold day and it's bottled at below 46%. So what they do is they bring the whiskey down to, say, -5 to -10 degrees Celsius, and then force it through some fine barrier filters, which strips the whiskey of all those long chain fatty acids and esters that have fallen out of suspension at that temperature. And certain industry bodies, again, I'm not going to name any names or name any companies or associations, but we all know who they are. Some industry bodies claim that, most of the industry bodies, in fact, will claim that chill filtration does not affect the flavour whatsoever. However, some of the people that actually work for some of those industry bodies will admit that it does at least affect the mouthfeel by taking out some of those long chain fatty acids and esters. Now, my theory is that it definitely affects mouthfeel by stripping the whiskey of all those bits and pieces. But I still believe, and I know there's a lot of you out there that also believe, that it also strips flavour. Now, think about this. Long chain fatty acids. We're talking, admittedly minuscule amounts, but we're talking about fat content in the whiskey. Now, that's not to say that it's an incredibly fattening product. If you drink too much of it, yes, it will be. But due to the process, how it's made, whiskey does contain fat compounds. Now, if you think about it, this is my theory, a lot of things are actually made more flavoursome by retaining some of the fat. Think about a steak, a nice marbled steak. How delicious is a nice marbled steak with a reasonable proportion of fat as compared to a completely lean steak. Now, yes, a lean steak can be tasty if it's cooked properly, or not overcooked, let's say, but a nice marbled piece of Wagyu or something like that. I mean, how delicious is that? Salads. You're using olive oil in your mayonnaise, or maybe you're just using a olive oil vinaigrette for the dressing. It's adding flavour. The salad without the dressing, that's edible, but it's a lot blander, isn't it? And there's many more examples that I can make. What I want to do is actually, I did a tiny little bit of research just to sort of confirm my theory for myself. So I'll just read you a couple of things what I found. So one site I found talks about the haze that develops in whiskey when it's cold as a type of flock or flocculation, and the type of haze that you get with a chilled whiskey or whiskey on ice or something like that is they call it reversible flock. So what they're saying, what you're seeing in flock is the ethyl esters of long chain fatty acids, as well as larger alkyl esters formed during the making of the whiskey and linked to factors such as the cut points employed at the distillery in question. That means when they start, because the very start of the distillation or distillate you can't use, and the very end you can't use because they can contain poisonous types of alcohol that you don't want in your whiskey. But within the safe range, which they often call the hearts, there's a bit of a variance in where you start and stop your cuts. So you can extend your cuts to get what some people might call a slightly dirtier whiskey, or oilier, perhaps is more the term for it. Or you can tighten your cuts down to the most cleanest part of the distillate or distillation run to have a very clean, lighter style of whiskey. They also go on to say that some extracts from cask maturation can also contribute to reversible flock. So, and then it says chill filtration is a means of preventing the reversible flock because it's in effect recreates the environment where the haze can develop, where those long chain fatty acids can fall out of suspension with the alcohol. And then they force it through barrier filters, very fine mesh ones, and capture it all. Therefore, they're taking it out of the spirit. Now, I also just Googled long chain fatty acids, and so I'll just read you this. Long chain fatty acids are fatty acids with 12 or more carbon atoms. Now, that's a bit technical. We're not going to go into the details of that. They're crucial for energy, cell membranes and signaling, as well as your immune system. They're found in foods like oils, nuts, meat and fish. Remember I said something about that earlier, didn't I? So you've got, you obviously got your saturated kind of long chain fatty acids, which are coming from your meats, animal products, monounsaturated, you've got polyunsaturated, which is your omega-3s and DHAs and all that kind of stuff, which is, a lot of that's coming from nuts and fish and things like that. Olive oil as well. And so it even says here that some of the sources of long-chain fatty acids are abundant in animal fats, vegetable oils such as olive oil, and some of the others. I prefer olive oil personally. Nuts, seeds, fish, and avocados. Love avocados. Poached eggs on avocado. Yum. So that's just telling me that long-chain fatty acids carry a lot of flavour, or add a lot of flavour. They're conducive to flavour. And yet some distillers or companies want to strip all of that out of the whiskey. So therefore, my theory is, does chill filtration strip flavour from the whiskey? Yes. You're taking the fats out, or some of the fats anyway. You're making it into a diet whiskey, if you like. If you're spending money on good quality single malt whiskey, you want the full experience. You want the full flavour. You don't want diet whiskey. That's just, or whiskey light. Let's call it whiskey light. Chill filtered whiskey is whiskey light. It's my term for 2026, but you won't hear me use it again this year because I just don't buy those kinds of whiskies. I like my marbled steak. I like my avocado. I like my fatty salmon fillets, cooked medium rare. And I like my whiskey unchill filtered and natural colour. There you have it, guys. Be keen to hear what everybody else thinks. If anybody else has got other theories about chill filtration or natural colour. Feel free to leave some comments. Leave us a like if you like this kind of video. And until next one, guys, Slàinte mhath.